Welcome to the Career Change Podcast, where you'll discover the frank and practical advice and resources that are already proven to work in the real world when it comes to changing careers or figuring out what business is right for you when you are a smart but likely also stuck, overwhelmed or overthinking person in your mid-30s, your 40s, your mid-50s. I'm your host, Rikke Hansen, a career change advisor, entrepreneur and former corporate HR professional with over 15 years experience of helping thousands of people just like you identify or create careers or businesses that are both meaningful and future-proof. Welcome home. Hey, it's Rikke here. Welcome to episode 41 of the Career Change Podcast. Why you don't have to risk it all to start a business. So I'm recording this particular episode because I regularly get emails from you, my wonderful listeners. Some of you are wondering how you'll ever be able to start your own business when you can't just quit your job and risk it all or go all in on your business from day one. And I'm hearing that you are feeling intimidated or put off or confused by a lot of the startup or what I call startup bro philosophies and quotes that are so popular on social media. So here's a classic email I'll get. Rikke, how could I ever start a business when I can't just chuck in my day job, my savings and go all in from day one and risk it all? I'm single or I have a family or this and that, whatever it is. So I'm sure you've seen those startup bro quotes too. You know, successful entrepreneurs and unicorns out of Silicon Valley telling you what it really takes if you want to start a business. Or rather, let's be honest, they're telling you what they believe and how they did it. Those 1 in a million outliers, right? If you can relate, maybe you find those quotes intimidating or even sleepless night inducing. Maybe you feel like that if you're over 35 and so far you've only ever been an employee. Maybe you only ever worked in the same profession. So what do you know, right? That's probably how you feel. But you might also be in a scenario where you have other people to consider, like, kids or a husband or an ex-wife or a partner or, the whole kitchen sink, right? So you might not be able to, or you might be single and just there's only you to look after you. And that's also can be an issue for some people financially. So there can be many reasons why when you hear, just chuck it all in, go all in, risk it all. You're like, yeah, that's great for some, but it doesn't really feel like they're talking to me, right? So this episode, my dear listener, that is for you. So keep listening. On the other hand, if you're finding those risk it all, quit it all quotes inspiring or helpful, or if you're looking to start a high growth startup, or if you're a footloose hipster who can just move back in your parents and only have yourself to worry about, then good for you. This particular episode is not for you, but you've got plenty of other episodes to choose from. And just to be clear, there's nothing wrong with startups per se. I find it to be an incredible world, but startups are not right for everyone, okay? So an alternative title for this episode could also very well have been The Risk-Averse Career Changer's Guide to Initially Starting a Business When You Can't Just, in quotation marks, risk it all. This particular episode is just going to be about how career change works in the real world for real people over 35. And by the way, that's what all of the Career Change podcast is about. How things work in the real world for smart people over 35, as opposed to the quotes and memes on the internet or the advice from the 1%, right? I often come out in hives when I hear those sort of quotes about you have to quit your job and you have to go all in from day one and risk it all and risk all your savings. I feel quite protective because I know there's some of you out there thinking, well, then I guess starting my own business is not for me. And I want you to know you don't have to follow those quotes. It's not the only way. And most importantly, it's not the only business type to start. Right? So I feel really protective of you, which is why I want you to know there are other ways to start a business and other types of businesses to start. Hence why I want to dedicate this episode to you, because I know if you're like any of my clients, you're also very likely to be risk adverse. If you're anything like, coming from a legal background, you might be a lawyer or an accountant or a finance person, like a lot of my clients. So when you see those entrepreneurial videos or quotes or memes telling you to go all in from day one and risk it all, you probably feel more fearful than motivated. So I want to let you know that there is another way. one that's actually a lot more reality checked and that actually works for people in your unique situation. And I just want to say it almost, and you've probably seen this as well, it almost feels like the last 10 years have been dominated by purely a focus on startups and startup bros at the expense of all other business models, right? And here's the thing, it's not those kind of massive growth startups that my clients, career change clients, they choose to start after 35. It tends to be a very different business model. So if you are an employee right now who wants to change career or start your own business and you've never had your own business before, I just want you to know, it's very normal to feel intimidated, to feel confused about what's required to start your own business, and also to question if you're really the entrepreneurial type, if you're really able to join the ranks of those who own their own business. I promise you, to risk it all is not the only way to start a business. And also, here's a hint. It's likely not a high growth startup that you want to start anyway, okay? Now, here's what I want you to know right up front. Here is what I know for sure. You can absolutely start your own business. And I'm talking about the initial early stages of starting a business here. You can absolutely initially start a business without risking it all or chucking it all in or quitting your job first. You can absolutely start your own business even whilst holding down a job. That is what the majority of my clients, my career change clients, have done over the years. So I've seen this again and again and again, right? So depending on how new you are to this podcast, since 2005, I've been a career change advisor. I've helped many corporate professionals over 35 change careers or start their own business without risking it all and without them, in most cases, having to quit their job first or go all in and quit their job and risk it all from day one, unless that is what they wanted or unless that is what they were able to, right? My clients are normal corporate professionals, and only a tiny handful of them had perfect conditions where they could risk it all and they had savings and, funding sources and stuff like that. So you're not alone. This is absolutely possible. My clients, they come from professions, from jobs where they work very hard to get where they are today. And a lot of them have children. Also, a lot of them are happily child-free, but also a lot of them have mortgages and an existing life to consider. And they'd still been able to start a business even whilst holding down a job. So don't despair. There are more than just the unicorn startup bro way to start your dream business, especially if you're not actually looking to start the next unicorn. Now, having said all of that, this does not necessarily mean that starting a business is for everyone, or that it's feasible, or that it's suitable, or even recommended for every single person for every single stage of their life, or that it's easy or simple. This is, by the way, something I spend a lot of time helping my clients figuring out whether actually starting a business is the right thing for them. But what I want to say right up front for the purpose of this particular episode is that whilst you don't have to quit your job initially, or whilst you don't have to risk it all before you start your business, you do need to be able to commit upfront 100% to your business, to treating it like a real business and a real commitment, as opposed to some kind of fluffy side hustle or fluffy little hobby thingy, right? You need to treat it like a real business, like a real investment from day one. You want a true 100% commitment to creating something much better than the job that you have right now, so that you can focus on making money in your business that would help you to eventually quit that job, as opposed to, treating your business like a hobby, right? A real commitment is required. And what that means is that you often need to make some tough, but in the big scheme of things, meaningful decisions about what you want to matter most to you now. Is it going to be your cushy job and your nice house and holidays and predictable life? The exact life that you might have right now, this snapshot in time? Or whether it's going to be more important for you to build a business, a career you truly enjoy, and that might therefore require trade-offs and changes. That is not what we're talking about in this episode. This episode is not about how you can start a business without making any changes or any trade-offs or any sacrifices whatsoever on the road to creating a business or career you're going to love. This particular episode is about how you can absolutely start a business without risking it all or chucking in your job first. This is really about what's possible for you, even if you're currently right now in a job and you feel like, you just can't see the wood for the trees. My dear listener, I really want you to come away from this episode get with the feeling of what's absolutely possible for you, that you can absolutely start your own business, that you who's sitting there right now and wondering how you could ever move from the job you're in right now that you hate towards a business you so crave. And also for those of you who might not even know yet what business you want to start, I want you to be inspired what's possible, but in a realistic way. I really want to close that gap so that people don't feel intimidated or, put off by those startup bros, but they realize there are so many different businesses that you can run. And for a lot of my clients, actually running their own business was the perfect career change vehicle for them, especially over 35. Not for everyone, but for a lot of my clients. So let's talk about what's possible. Also, even better, towards the end of this episode, you'll discover a unique advantage that you actually have as a professional over 35 that you can use to initially fund the business you want to start. And it actually includes the profession, the job you hate or no longer enjoy, how you can use that to fund the business of your dreams instead. All right? So keep listening. There's never just one way to initially start a business, no matter what those startup bros and gurus they tell you. So I want you to know that it's absolutely possible and realistic to go from where you are today, stuck and unhappy and can't see a way to where you want to be, running your own business. I want you to know that relatable role models, they do exist. Now, obviously, like with many other podcast episodes, there's so much to say about this. There's a lot of nuance. I just want to get you a quick overview and make you feel empowered. If you want me to go deeper with any of this, obviously let me know. There are many more episodes coming. But remember, you always have options. You always have choices. Don't let any startup bros intimidate you. You just need the right perspective and professional advice. All right. So there are 3 pointers, like strategies I want to talk about. Number 1 is to watch out who you listen to if you don't want to start their type of business. And then number 2, you don't need to risk it all or quit your job to start a business, but you do need to start something. And then number 3, use your job or a job to fund your business initially, aka cash cow. We talked about this before, but for those of you who haven't heard, this is going to be a game changer for you. Yes, and I just used every old startup word right there, but it really does change the game. Now, let's go straight into number 1. Watch out for who you listen to if you don't want to start their type of business, particularly when it comes to how to get started with that business, the initial stages. That is what we're talking about here, the initial stages. Here's what's so important. If you are not looking to start a unicorn or multi-billion-dollar startup like Facebook or Airbnb or Spotify, then why do you feel like you have to listen to what those founders they say and slavishly follow what they have to say and let yourself be intimidated by those kind of founders who did? If you are not looking to focus solely on growth above all else, which is a classic Paul Graham definition of a startup, where the focus is on growth. And if you're not looking to scale quickly or find investors, and then after some years sell it off and move on to your next startup, then please don't think that startup quotes like risk it all or quit your job and go all in from day one and put all your savings into it has to apply to you. It does not. There are better options for you that are more reality checked. On the other hand, if you do want to create the next unicorn or become the next Mark Zuckerberg, then do go and hang out with those startup bros and drink the Kool-Aid. Because, hey, you're going to need it. However, if you are a corporate professional, if you're a professional, over 35, in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, who can't just quit your job tomorrow and risk it all to initially start that business, then this is what I really want you to hear. be careful watch out for who you listen to if you don't want to start their type or kind of business. If you don't want to be the next Elon Musk, then stop it with what I call the startup bro self-flagellation, okay? In short, if the kind of business you want to start at this stage of your career is not a unicorn or it's not a high-growth startup that you can sell off in the next couple of years, and if you're finding all of the startup bro quotes unhelpful and even damaging to you, then please stop listening to them. Stop following them. Don't allow them to dictate how you feel or don't feel or what you think is possible for you or not possible. This is particularly important when it comes to getting started with the business, the early stages. There are many other ways to work for yourself than high growth startups. It's literally the whole sort of high growth startup model is just one model that's become super popular in the last decade, but it is by no means the only type of business. So feel free to get out of that echo chamber and stop beating yourself up. Now, just to be clear, this does not mean that high growth startup and unicorn philosophies and strategies cannot be helpful for you. A lot of them are phenomenal and I recommend them for a lot of my clients. However, you use them as and when they're relevant versus slavishly following them and believe it's the only way. And you generally follow them not really in the beginning, but more over time, and you sort of use them when they're needed. This is not about slagging off the startup world. I love the startup world. This is about knowing when it's relevant and when it's not. Instead, what I want you to do, I want you to honor and focus on the kind of business you do want to start. And if you're like most of my clients, you are likely not looking to start the next Facebook or a high growth startup anyway. You are likely a much better candidate, at least initially, to start a much smaller business and also a business you actually want to run for years and one that's going to be meaningful and enjoyable for you as well as helpful to your client, as opposed to being all about just growth and speed and money and fame and investments and the whole, high growth startup spiel. If you're like many of my mid-career professional clients, it's much more likely that you are looking to run a sustainable but still profitable business, not one that's going to kill you, but one that's actually sustainable for you and that still makes money. A lot of my clients often are looking to start businesses around consulting or advisory work or coaching or services, and in some stages or in some areas also products. And a lot of them are also looking to start online businesses. So where they're sustainable, there's a lot less risk, and where you can scale it even as a smaller business. So if that's that is something they want to invest in, they want to grow, they want to build over time. And they really want to very much for it to be around, not just money and growth. But I think once you get to a certain age, and certainly after 35 and in your 40s, it's rarely just about money and growth anymore. Because for a lot of you listening, you know that just because you get paid a certain salary, that doesn't make up for the fact that you don't enjoy that career or that profession. So a lot of you, the reason why you probably want to change careers and start a business is you want something that at this stage in your life is a lot more aligned with who you are, the kind of lifestyle you want, your values, your interests. You want to see that reflected in the work that you do, right? And that is rarely a high growth startup. So be very careful who you listen to if you don't want to start the next Facebook or the next Spotify, okay? This is what's so amazing and why I love helping people over 35 figuring out what businesses are right for them. What business is right for them is that you have such a unique opportunity once you have a certain amount of experience and skills and knowing yourself to really translate a lot of that into a business you're truly going to enjoy running. And that's going to be both meaningful and profitable. So let's just put those myths to rest once and for all. You don't have to quit your job and go all in on your business from day one unless you want to or can. You don't have to risk it all and plow all of your saving into your business from the very beginning unless you want, and you can. A career change or a business does not have to be a matter of all or nothing. What matters is that you start something, that you start somewhere. We'll get there in a minute. So that also means that I just also eliminated what you might have had as handy excuses or procrastination reasons for not starting your business. See what I did there? Now remember this. And I feel really, really strongly about this. I spend a lot of time researching this new world of work. And what I can promise you is that startup bros and startup business models are just one part of the world of work. They just happen to be very loud and amplified by the media. But this new world of work, and the world of work in general, is still developing and will continue to develop. Nothing is set in stone. One of the things I love more than anything else is I love to see how these new opportunities for creating careers or work or businesses can work for you and what type of work you want at this stage in your life, as well as what people want to pay for, right? So look out for people and businesses that inspire you and that you actually want to run, relatable role models, and, focus on them. Okay, so number one, watch out for who you listen to if you don't want to start that type of business. Enough said. Okay, let's move on to point number two. You do not need to risk it all and quit your job to start a business, but you do need to start something. So let me repeat that. You do not need to risk it all and quit your job to start a business, but you do need to start something. So here's the deal when it comes to starting a business that matters to you. Starting a business does not have to be a matter of all or nothing, or of quitting a job or investing all of your savings up front. What matters most is that you actually start something and that you don't wait. Building a financially sustainable business takes time. So there's no reason why you shouldn't start doing it on the side whilst you still make money from the career or job you want to leave behind. We'll talk about that in the next point. What's so great about starting a business on the side, if you have to, is, whilst you still have money coming in from a job or contracts, is that it allows you to do two very important things before quitting your job. Number one, it allows you to actually find out, do you actually like running this business? A little bit like dating before marriage, right? You do want to test drive your business. Do you enjoy it, right? What's the initial feedback? But also number two, will it actually make money? It's not just about starting a me business. It's also about them. You will know I'll talk a lot about that in episodes. So will it make money? What about other clients out there? And what's the feedback from them? Is it the worst thing they've ever seen? Is it incredible? Will they actually pay you? You need, for both of those ones, number one and number two, as in, will you like it? Number one. And number two, will it make money? Are there clients? Is this how they want you? Is this how they want this? You want real life feedback. So rather than thinking about this business, you want to start it. You want to get out of your head and get real life feedback with this business. Right? A lot of people are like, oh, will I like it? Well, let's find out. Take it for a spin. Develop specific experiments, specific tests or projects, smaller projects to help you find out, right? And this is so important. Will it make money? And will you like it? Those are really the biggest kind of issues. And you can test drive that to find out, right? There is a really great episode with more information about this that I did, episode 27, that is called, Should I Turn My Passion into a Business? So you might want to listen to that one because most people, they only think about, the number one, oh, will I like this? But it's just as important to figure out, well, will they like it, i.e. the clients? Okay, so go listen to that one as well, episode 27. So how you start that business, how you start something is by test driving it. And you likely heard me, I talk a lot about test driving. You started by test driving it. It's not, so many people have this idea that they work behind the scenes to get this business perfect. And then they somehow launch it to big fanfare. It doesn't work like that. You start test driving it as early and soon as you can. So here, if you're new to this concept of test driving as and how to test drive, the easiest way to give you an example of how to test drive is an analogy. And I'll use a restaurant analogy. Now, most of my clients do not start restaurants, but I'm just giving you this analogy because everybody knows what a restaurant is. So the way to test drive is you don't start your business by quitting your job so you can open an entire restaurant straight away and plow all your savings into it. Rather, you start by picking out a particular dish or type of food, and then you test drive it with a pop-up first, or a food truck, or by catering for different parties, okay? This approach of test driving an element or part of a business first is absolutely vital. This approach will give you an initial feel and will also give you data, as in, do you enjoy it? Will it make money? Before you go all in and marry it, before you quit your job, before you cut out that cash flow source. And here's another reason why starting on the side initially, rather than going all in from day one, it works really well. If you are an overthinker or perfectionist or someone with too many ideas, one of the best ways to get out of your head and get real life feedback is to test drive on the side. So you can keep testing your assumptions in the real world and involve real people and clients as soon as you can. Now, most of my clients are either perfectionists or overthinkers or people with too many ideas. So the test driving is absolutely vital, because that's one of the ways to either you only perfect your ideas in the real world. So many people, they waste months and years trying to come up with the perfect business behind the scenes, and then they launch it, nobody wants it. You're so much better off test driving in the real world early on. Same thing for people who overthink, same thing for people who have too many ideas. You need to get your clients involved as early as possible. So that is the something that you do start. That is how you start that business, is by test driving. And also, interestingly, test driving is where the startup world actually has some great tools that you can benefit from using, even if you don't want to build the next unicorn. So in the startup world, they have this term called MVP, minimum viable product. Or you can also say minimum viable service. So that's this whole idea about how can we relatively quickly put something together that represents the kind of service or business or product we want to build, so we can quickly get some market feedback. Here is often how I apply this with my own clients. We look at, and this is something I teach also inside of your career change map. What are the elements of your business that you've now designed? What are the elements we can pull out and test drive for you and for the market? Is there a workshop you can run? Is there a consulting gig you can do? Is there a prototype product or service offer? So again, think the restaurant pop-up analogy. We're not looking to start a whole restaurant from day one. We're looking to start a pop-up, right? You want to start somewhere small but concrete when it comes to initially getting that business off the ground. Right? So, relatable example for you here. A lot of my clients want to start a consulting firm or an advisory firm or a service or an online firm, a program. So you can absolutely start that business without quitting your job. You just pull out the concrete problems you can best solve for your client group and that you can best get the results with, and then you start there. That's a really good place to start. Just really pick the most juicy, easiest problems to solve for your clients that are painful for them, and start doing that. Just start by problem rather than whole industry. So an example, this was actually very recently inside of your career change map on one of our calls. So Claire she was really keen to move into leadership training. Now, coming from an HR background like me, I can tell you leadership training is a vast area and it can be really vague, and there are a lot of people in that field. But Claire was thinking about, I'm going to quit my job and then I'm going to spend 1 year developing this massive leadership program about how to become the leader you always wanted to be. And then she launched it and see. And I'm like, no, Claire, you do not do that. What you do is, what you're doing here is the perfectionist thing, which is actually really vague. You don't want to hide behind the scenes and perfect this thing for a whole year before you launch it. What you do want to do is, let's start by test driving one element of this. Let's pick a really painful pain point for your client group, and then let's do just a short 1 hour lunch workshop. So rather than some kind of vague leadership training as in how to be the leader you want to be, let's talk about a 1 hour lunch workshop. And I literally gave her this title, 5 concrete ways to handle employees who drive you crazy. Obviously, that was the tagline between her and me. That was clearly not the PC one she was going to do. But let's do a 1 hour lunch workshop. 5 concrete ways to handle employees who drive you crazy. Now, my dear listener, what do you think people are most likely to pay for? A vague concept like how to become a better leader, or a really concrete, specific, painful problem that is matched with a 1 hour workshop where they can get a concrete, smaller problem handled, right? And you can also charge for that because people charge to have their problems taken away from them. So what's really great about test driving, as in pulling out an element of the business and start test driving in a small way, it forces you to get specific from day one. Because if you're doing something smaller, and I'm using the pop-up analogy here, whether it's a workshop or a pop-up or, a service, whatever it is, once it's a smaller element, you need to get specific. And the more specific you can be, the more likely you also are to make money, because you don't have to explain too much to people what this is. A workshop that is 5 concrete ways to handle employees who drive you crazy. Now, that I get, versus how to become a better leader. Yeah, right. That's way too vague. So what I want to recommend is that you try a few workshops and see for Claire, I was like, let's try a few workshops and see A, what do you enjoy? And B, what makes money? What gets the best result before you actually start turning it into an online program? Get to know yourself and your clients first. Work with real clients. Get to know yourself first. Do you enjoy doing this? What's the feedback? What gets the most results? And then you can always turn it into a longer online program. That is so, so important. Do you see how that analogy totally works? So an exercise for you is really the same. You got to ask yourself, what is the thing that you can start test driving? What is it that you can pull out and start test driving? Think about what can you start taking action on? What are the elements of the business you can start pulling out and start test driving so that you can allow yourself to experience either to fall in love with it or to know that it's not the right thing for you, right? Those are kind of the 2 outcomes we're looking for. And a mixture as well. So, you either end up, test driving this, you'll fall in love with it, and you'll know what it is you want to do and that your ideal client want to pay for and repurchase. That one is easy. You fall in love, it's the right thing, people pay you, off you go. You can go all in. Or you might realize, oh God, this is what I don't want, or this is what my client doesn't want. And, it might just be that you think this is not as nice as I originally thought, but you risk a lot less because you still haven't quit your job. You're doing this on the side. And that's really vital information to get whilst you're still in your job. And to use a relationship analogy, it's not necessarily a bad thing in the big scheme of things to have a bad experience, because that will teach you a lot about what you don't want, which will help you getting even closer to figure out what you do want, right? So you'll recognize a good thing when you see it, and you will allow yourself to fall in love again. You just got to find the right thing. And it's exactly the same thing with test driving a business. Here's what's so important. You can't think your way through to the answer, as in, is it a good idea? Will I like it? So instead, you need exposure therapy. You need to jump in and test drive it and allow yourself to fall in love or realize that wasn't the right thing. But then you take that information and you make it even better. Okay? So get out there and start doing that. So the classic thing, well, I cannot start a business because I cannot go full time or go all in from day one. Not a problem, my dear. We just look at, well, what is the version of the business that you can start now? What is the smaller version of the business or the element that you can pull out and start test driving right now? Get clear on that and do that. Step number 1 is really decide what version of your business that you can start now. All right. So point number 2, you do not need to risk it all and quit your job to start a business, but you do need to start something. So start test driving that something and see how that goes. And point number 3, use your job or a job to fund your business initially, aka cash cow. Or in other words, milk your cash cow. Now, the cash cow is a concept that, the name of it is just a name I came up with that I've developed with many, many clients over the years. And all it means is that your cash cow means using your current profession or skills to stay in or take a full-time job or a part-time job or contract or consulting work that will allow you to have money coming in whilst you also start your business on the side. Right? So it's using your existing skill set to make money whilst you start your business on the side. For some of you, that will mean staying with your current job. For others of you, that will mean looking for another job. And this cash cow concept, is the real reason why it's absolutely possible for you to start a business without quitting your job. It's the reason why it's possible. The reason why that's possible is because you can use the very profession you want to get away from to initially fund your first business. This is so important. You use your existing skill set to make money whilst you also start your business on the side. And like I said, for some of you, that's just staying for a bit longer in the job you already have for the cash flow, or it's taking a different one or a contract. But it's really using the skill set that you've spent years, developing and investing in, because that's something that is really worth money. So why wouldn't you milk that for all it's worth in order to allow you to start a business you love on the side and then build that up? Now, there are 4 reasons why I recommend this strategy, especially for corporate professionals over 35. Like, number 1 is if you're like many of my clients inside of my program, then you are likely a corporate professional in your 30s or your 40s or your 50s, and you live in a big, expensive city like London or New York or Sydney, and you got bills to pay. And you're probably wondering how starting that business is ever going to happen if you don't also have money coming in. And that's why the cash cow is very, very handy. Now, whilst a career change or business might require you to make trade-offs and lower your costs and get really honest about whether your expensive holiday or handbag or whatever is worth the compensation for being a lawyer is for you, you do need to make those decisions, but those changes are not always possible to make overnight. So you can buy yourself time by, for the more downshifting, by using the cash cow so that it allow you to downshift over time, allow you to make different financial decisions over a period of time to set you up for a more realistic transition. So it'll smooth the curve. If you don't feel like you can chuck it all in tomorrow, that you do need to spend some time whilst lowering your curve in terms of how you might spend your money, what kind of lifestyle you have, then the cash cow is going to allow you to do that over a period of time to just smooth that transition. Number 2, using the cash cow concept is also perfect if you're risk adverse. You're likely to be risk adverse, like I mentioned before, if you're anything like a lot of the clients that I work with, lawyers, accountants, finance people. When you see entrepreneurial videos telling you to go all in from day one and risk it all and quit your job, you probably feel more fearful than motivated. So I want to let you know that there is another way that's a lot more reality checked and that actually works for people in your situation. That's what most of my clients have done. They actually still stay in a job using the professional skill set. And they spend so many years investing in so they can have some cash flow coming in whilst they also start the business on the side and whilst they start as early on as they can test driving. Also, number 3, here's a funny thing. A cash cow helps you reframe or actually appreciate your day job, because now you know the reason why you go to that job is that the purpose of going there is to fund your dream job. It's to fund your dream business. Versus what you might feel right now because you haven't started anything. Now you probably just hate every minute of it because you got nothing else to do. There's nothing to look forward to. It's just, time spent in a job. Now, you actually, once you start your business on the side, then that cash cow job, you're like actually going to be grateful for it because it's what's funding your dreams. So when you go in there, this is not forever. You are building the new thing on the side, and it's only a matter of time before you are able to jump. So no longer is a job a dead end. It is a means to an end. So rather than hating it and wanting to throw the baby out with the bathwater, you know that, you're potentially sitting on a gold mine in the sense that your current skill set is going to help you fund the business you want to run. So you change from hating that job to actually looking at it like an ally that can eventually help you get to where you want to get to. This is why it's so important to get that business off the ground as early as possible, because it will help with the pain you're feeling right now, right? So start that business. You can absolutely do it. And also, number 4, why wouldn't you use your existing skill set to make good money? Because what I see a lot of people do, they sort of do this knee-jerk reaction where they quit it all and they run away only to return to nothing and then end up working in Starbucks, so to say. This is really the antidote. The cash cow is the antidote to a really damaging tendency I see with a lot of corporate professionals. They hate their job, they hate their career, they want to start their own business, but they're so desperate that they forget that they can actually use the very well-paying profession they have to fund their first business rather than go and take whatever low-level job that they might need. Okay, so your stopgap job could actually easily be you using your high-value skills, and even better, taking those jobs that might allow you to work from home. And remember, 3 days are better than 4. Don't do 4. It's either 3 or it's 5. Okay, and here's the thing. I totally get that you might not want to work in that profession any longer. You just feel like you want to throw it away. But you can absolutely take the most toxic parts out of it and go find a job somewhere else that will pay you really, really well whilst you start your business on the side. So if you're tempted to chuck it all in and just take whatever job whilst you build your business on the side, I do want to recommend that you think about you're probably most likely to get the most amount of money using your current skill set for a cash cow job than you would working, like I say, at Starbucks or working, whatever kind of freelancing work you can get. So just something to think about. Now, I know this might be at the back of your head, so I just want to address it. The best cash cow job might not be your current job. Your best cash cow job might not be your current job if there's a lot of toxicity there. And also, not all cash jobs are created equal. You want to find the best one for you rather than just throwing it all away. So for some of my clients, what it means is that cash cow job is actually staying in their current job unless it's too toxic or unless it's taking away all of your time. So what a lot of my clients, they do, they still, for a little while, they stay full-time, but they see how much they can work from home or they negotiate down to a 3-day week. Now, don't do a 4-day week because basically what happens, and I know this from having worked in HR, they will just cram 5 days worth of work into 4 days and pay you for 4 days. So either do 3 or do 5. Okay. Now, I have an in-depth episode called Should I Quit My Job? This is episode number 23 that you might want to listen to in terms of when should you quit it, when should you look for the cash cow, all of that. So make sure you listen to that one. But this is something I do with a lot of my clients. It's actually one of the most important things that I often do is that we look at, okay, what is the stopgap job going to be that's going to allow you to have money coming in whilst you start your business on the side? And for some people, it means that actually the scenario they're in right now is way too toxic and they do need to go find another job, possibly in the same industry, that is going to take away the toxicity, the politics. Often when you've been in a job for many years and you got to the stage where you hate it, you want to leave it behind, there's so much toxicity and so many social contracts and so much just toxic stuff that you do need to remove yourself from that and go to another job with the clarity of knowing you are leaving this profession so you can just free up a lot of that mental space. And also with their better working hours, working from home, all of that, you're a lot better with that. But listen to episode 23 in terms of how that works. We don't have time to go into all of those kind of details here, but it's really important. Often one thing you can do right now is to ask yourself, in your current job, in terms of how toxic it is, how risky is it for me to stay in this job? How risky is it for me to stay in my current job? If I stay, will that negatively or positively impact my chances of actually changing careers or starting my own business? That is a really good one to ask. How risky is it for me to stay in my current job? If I stay, will that negatively or positively impact my chances of actually changing careers or starting my business? For some of my clients, the answer is yes. For others, it's no. Right? So you either renegotiate your current job, ideally some hybrid working or part-time as time passes, or you need to find a stopgap job, right? Or series of contracts. So really the cash cow job is using your current profession to initially finance your career change or your first business. Like if you are in a toxic scenario, it means that you're looking for a similar job in a similar industry, but a job that's going to allow you to find the mental space and also the time to change careers or start your business on the side. So that means that you quit that toxic job and you move to the cash cow job to buy the mental space, to buy your health back, and also to buy the time to start on the side. That's what happens really often. I often get emails from my clients saying, hey, Rikke, I quit my job to go to that cash cow job. So now I can focus a lot more. I know my business is going to happen. That happens so often. A classic example is Nicola, a client of mine who worked with me a few years ago, and we designed a business for her in the health space. But when we worked together, she was in a very, very toxic environment in a law firm in London. And she knew that if she stayed in that job, that business was never going to happen. She didn't have the mental space, the health space to do that. So together we decided how she could exit that job and find a job with less working hours and a lot less of a toxic culture, a lot less of toxic history. Maybe it wasn't something she would have gone for if she really wanted to make a career in law. Might not have been the kind of job she would normally have looked for. But in this case, she didn't want to be in law anymore. She wanted to start her own business in health. So she jumped to that cash cow, and that allowed her to start the business on the side and then go all in. So for others, you might not be in a super toxic or taxing scenario. So you might want to renegotiate. I've had several lawyers doing that. And I'm specifically mentioning lawyers because they're like, that doesn't happen in my industry. Well, if you're a really good lawyer, they would oftentimes, I've seen, rather allow you to work part-time or contracts or hybrid. So, and in other industries too, if you're really, really good, they might be willing to negotiate better conditions for you in terms of freeing up time, freeing up space and all of that. And also remember, what's so great in the worker world now is that a lot of those hybrid jobs or jobs full stop, they might actually be working from home, which in itself would allow you to free up a lot more mental space and allow less toxicity, less politics in the sense of you feeling it in your body because you're in an environment you don't enjoy all day. It's really interesting. I recently saw some stats from Ryan Roslansky, who is the CEO of LinkedIn, and he was saying that pre-pandemic, 1% of all jobs posted on LinkedIn were remote, but after the pandemic, they're up to 14%. And what's so interesting is that they're obviously the most popular one. So don't just say that it doesn't happen anymore. And again, this is something I've seen with a lot of my clients. This move, either renegotiating or moving to a cash cow job, it works really, really well. So remember point number 3, use your job or a job to fund your business initially. I can't use that cash cow. That is so important. You can absolutely do that. That is how career changes in businesses, they happen in the real world. So the good news is that nobody has to quit their job or a job or risk it all in order to start their career change or to start their own business on the side. Because remember, a career transition is not a one-off event. It takes time. So, like I mentioned before, that also means you got no excuses. Everybody can get started, but let's make sure you are in the best job or contract work scenario for doing it. Okay? That is what I really want you to know. So wrap up. Number 1, watch out who you listen to if you don't want to start their type of business. Number 2, you don't need to risk it all or quit your job to start a business, but you do need to start something. And point number 3, use your job or a job to fund your business initially, aka use your cash cow. So over to you. What is the decision you need to make right now? What is that business you want to run? And what is the version of that business that you can start now, can start on the side, whilst you potentially use your current profession as a cash cow to fund it? Here's the thing. It takes time to get your business up and running anyway. So there's no reason why you can't start on the side. I will keep saying this. It doesn't have to be a matter of all or nothing. What matters is that you start something. So there you go. No excuses as long as you're committed 100% upfront to that business. There's no reasons why you cannot start now. You always have options. So know that. You want to start the right business for you. Go do it. If you need help with that, I'll see you over at thecareerchangepodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening.